got a question. Ask Tom on Home Show Radio.
This is Home Show Radio live on Facebook and YouTube. Your questions, Tom's answers. Now here's Tom Tynan and Charlie Mosier.
Hello. See you right there.
There we
Hello. There we are. Hello. Hello. Hi. Welcome to Ask Tom Live. Where's Tom? Oh, yay. There he is. Okay, I'm Tom. And I answer home improvement questions, believe it or not. I try to make it interesting and fun. I don't do the sound effects. That's not my ball game. But that's Mr. Mosier, who's somewhere here in the studio with his triangle and soon to have a tambourine, I've been told. But you don't have a tambourine sound. That's not a tambourine. That's one of those video things. No, that's Bozo the Clown. Okay, and welcome, Bozo the Clown. No, not Charlie Mosier. But Ronald McDonald. Anyway, we're going to hear it answering your questions. I do it on the radio, 35 years now. Home Show Radio on Sports Radio 610 in Houston, Texas. Do it 9 to 12 on Saturday and 8 to 11 on Sunday Central Time. And, of course, you can catch it anytime you want going to homeshowradio.com, where we get a lot of questions also, and we're going to answer some here today at our Facebook / YouTube Live. And, of course, before me on Saturdays, we have an expert who even joins us at the last weekend of every month here on this particular segment of Ask Tom Live, is Danny Milliken, a genius when it comes to planting. He knows the Houston area well, the Texas area well. He's a 8th or 9th generation Texan, but he knows his plants. He's got a great extensive background and a lot of good people that help him. And I know Charlie can jump in here now and explain a little more about all those people, because I'm too busy getting ready for my show with all the show prep I have to do to worry about what Danny's doing before me.
Yeah, the Home Show Pros, the Home Show Garden Pros.
There you go. See?
Yeah, it's a group of a half dozen locally owned nurseries that are, whoops, not there, that one.
Yes.
All right. Anyway,
that reminded me of something when I saw it. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. I don't want to know about it. It's okay.
Yeah,
we're not going there.
I didn't want to go back there either.
Okay. Anyway, so it's a group of local nurseries that we've put together that help answer your questions about gardening and so on. And that every week, there's a different one on, and they have a different knowledge base, and they can help you get more from your gardening. That's what the Garden Pros are about. And of course, what we do here is answer your questions. If you want to get your questions on, go and put them in the comment section down, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll come in here now. There are people who watch this on the Garden Pros page or on or my own page on Facebook. If you want your questions to appear on the show, you have to go to Home Show Radio on Facebook or the Home Show Radio on YouTube. Either one of those, we'll get your questions here. We'll put them up, and Tom can answer them. Came to my attention last week we weren't seeing some of them. So
okay, and also I'm going to give a quick plug to Mosier Media, which is Charlie Mosier's outfit. He's a marketing genius. He works all over the country. He kept me on the air for probably 27 out of those 35 years. There's no doubt about it, with his geniusness. And if you want to get into advertising and market your company really well, Mosier Media, Houston, Texas. There, Charlie, I had to do it once in a while for you.
Yes, and the need has never been greater because Sandy is finished, almost done with the kitchen and bathroom. So next,
and the
God only
swimming
knows
pool
what's
is
next,
coming up next.
Actually, what's next is what's news.
Okay, let's move on.
We start off with news around the world and up your block to help you with your home improvements. And this week, good news. You wonder, the Texas legislature only meets every other year. So what do they do when they come in? Well, this time they actually helped tame the HOA a little bit. You may not be aware of this, but HOAs in Texas have enormous power. They are, for one thing, they have the ability to foreclose on properties without the participation of a judge. So that's why when somebody tells you they're on the HOA committee, you want to be really nice to them.
By the way, HOA, Charlie, just because
Homeowners Association.
Homeowners Association,
right.
Thank you.
Right. As opposed to a property owners association, which is a whole different kettle of fish. But we're sticking with HOA because that's what the legislation affected. And what it did was they've reined in the more zealous HOAs to provide protections. They passed several bills, and we'll just say right up front that not all HOAs are bad. We actually have a really good one. We're in a super neighborhood, and ours is awesome. They do a great job for us, and but there are some out there that are bad, and they've protected from a bunch of overreach in what was passed here in the legislature. For instance, they can no longer prohibit a pool fence.
Oh, that's good.
There are some that not let you put a fence around the pool, but they can specify what kind you can put in. So under SB 1588, which was the one that has all these in it now. And the exception to that is you can put in, without even talking to them, they can't regulate, a black mesh fence. If it's high enough, it's high enough not to climb over, it doesn't require approval. You can just go ahead and order and put that bad boy in.
I like how specific that says, not too tall.
Not too tall.
It depends who you are.
Right. And I will tell you, this is driving me nuts. This is crooked, and I got to fix this because you know me.
Fine.
You know me.
Okay,
Anyway.
that's an outtake from Gutfeld.
Right.
All right.
So anyway, what does Gutfield addressed his camera too?
He does the same.
Well, who's the guy who used to be on late night? Who used to slap the side of the camera too?
I don't know.
Anyway, so.
There's been a lot.
But anyway, there's something else in 1588 you want to know about, and that is that under 1588, they can no longer put restrictions on security cameras or motion detectors on your property. There used to be a time when they could regulate that. And now, by the way, every Texan can put a perimeter fence up for security purposes around their property. Apparently, there were some HOAs that were restricting putting those up. Other changes that came up in 1588 was the right to canvass in subdivisions has been protected. There were subdivisions that were preventing political candidates from canvassing inside of subdivisions. That's gone. You can no longer do that. They're allowed to come in. They can't be prevented. And the ability to file liens has been restricted. Oh, you know what? There is one more, by the way. They also, let me fix this so I can figure out where this thing is that I'm supposed to be on. Go back to this one. Hang on. Sorry. There we go. Religious displays cannot be banned anymore. So there were subdivisions that were giving people a hard time about putting up creches or stuff for other holidays, and you can't do that anymore. And by the way, other changes is budget amendments can only be voted on in open meetings now. They can't do it behind closed doors. Any contract your HOA takes on that's over $50,000 requires bids. And if you pay your fees late, they can still report you to credit agencies, but your HOA has to pay for it. Because apparently before they passed this, if you were late and they reported you to the credit listing services, they'd charge you the fee for doing it. And they can't do that anymore. So that's the deal. That's what's news this week. So let's get to. And so we move on now to the other part of our program. Oh, and by the way, let me just open this up here. There we go. Okay, good. I had one window that wasn't open here. All right,
let's do anything but sit here. It's okay.
You know,
I don't have any buttons or anything to push. You know, that's
years ago when I first started working with Tom, my mother came to visit, and she says, "Well, Charlie, what does Tom do?" And I said, "He answers the phone."
Pretty much on radio.
Pretty true.
Back then.
Pretty true. Still do. Yeah. All right, let's get to the questions. First question we have for you comes from Louise in Phoenix, Arizona. She says, I'm considering a 14.5 SEER system versus a 15.75 SEER system. Both are single stage, and the 15 has variable air handler. Is that extra SEER really worth an extra $600? What say you, Tom?
I say I wouldn't bother with it, especially in that part of the country where you don't have to worry a lot about humidity control. You're just cooling the air and make yourself comfortable. Single stage is always the way I go, only because it's simple, it works, and when it comes to repair costs, if you need a new motor or something like that, the costs are reasonable as far as parts go. So it's just a lot simpler, and I think simple is better, especially with the new SEER 14s, 15s, that kind of thing, just the new equipment in general. If you compare that to a unit that might be 20 years old or 15 years old that you're replacing it, it's going to be so much more efficient. It's not worth another $600 on top because your savings is going to be diminishing so much that it would take you way too many years to get your money back. And so I would keep it simple. I think that 14 SEER, you're going to find great efficiency. It's going to be simple. It'll be easy to repair. You won't have to have a genius technician to take care of it, someone who's specializing in that. That used to be a problem with air-to-air heat pumps and stuff. You had to have someone who was actually schooled in those kind of pieces of equipment, which you don't have to worry about with something like this. I think it's a good choice, and save the $600 for something else, because I don't see you getting it back for a long time.
And of course, you're going to want to take care of it every year with a tune-up, and that's
Do that with any kind of unit. Mine's
Right.
22 years old. I get my yearly tune-up too. If you don't do that, it's just like a car. A car can be brand new. A car can be 10 years, 20 years old. I've got one that's almost 60 years old, an old 66 Mustang. I still got to take care of it. You got to take care of it. It still runs fine. Not that I go out and use it every day, but the fact of the matter is that you got to maintain any kind of mechanical systems. And just to throw it out there right now, because this is timely, we have a hurricane, tropical storm, something coming our way into the Gulf of Mexico, where Houston
Maybe.
is. It probably won't hit us. Thank you.
right.
But a generator is also a mechanical system that if you have one, maintain it every year also, because you never know. They said it's way out there, right? You see the map, and they said, oh, but Florida will find it by Monday, just dump it all over them. Monday, that's only 3 days away, because they move pretty
Right.
quick. So always be prepared, even with your generators.
It is one of the things that I found when I moved here, that you have like about 72 hours warning, if not longer.
If you know it's going to get close to hitting you, you bet.
You bet. But people wait till the day before to go shopping.
I know. Well, yeah, let's not hoard toilet paper. It's not going to last that long. You know, a 4-pack should do you. But just get
I
what
worry
you
more.
need.
Yeah, I worry more about a tropical storm than I worry about hurricanes.
Oh, gosh, yes. People ask me, Tom, hurricanes. Hurricanes blast through in about 12 hours to 24 hours, and they're done. Tropical storm will sit on you. Harvey was one here in Houston we went through, I don't know, 5 years ago. But it just dumped and dumped and dumped. And we had one called Francis and one called Allison way back when. I will take a hurricane over a tropical storm. In fact, Harvey, when it hit Corpus, hit as a hurricane, went back out in the Gulf, came back to Houston and stuck on us as a tropical storm. Yet we call it Hurricane Harvey because it made it that far. But it was a tropical storm on Houston, and we're the ones that got the worst of it.
Yeah, I read about it in the paper.
Yeah, you lived through
Armando.
it. You got almost flooded.
Almost.
Right up to chinny chin right
It
there,
missed.
man.
It came right up just below
Yeah, it
our weep holes. So, and meanwhile, our backyard was bone dry. It was just the front, but whatever.
It's okay. That's why
Armando, he says his house is 71 years old. Tom, he says, I got an estimate for installation of cellulose blown-in attic insulation. What are your thoughts on cellulose?
I wouldn't use it. I would never use it. I've been telling people for years not to use it. There's a lot of different reasons why. Chemicals such as borates that they use as fire retardants are put in there. Anytime you have a product that's sold as an insulation, it has to meet a fire standards for good reason, because that stuff could flame up like crazy. People will put all kinds of junk up, ground up newspapers, which kind of cellulose is, but it's not refined. They'll put styrofoam balls, they'll put all this stuff in their attic thinking, hey, instead of throwing it away, I'll make insulation. But if you ever get a fire, the outgassing of that, what's going to happen to you, it'll kill you instantly. You got to be really careful. So insulation is controlled through fire retardant materials. The beauty of fiberglass is it doesn't need any because it's a glass fiber, so it already meets the standards. When you get into refined cardboards and newspapers and paper products like cellulose, which is a natural product, they have to put these other things in there. And quite frankly, borates are, and they'll tell you, it kills roaches, it kills bugs, it's a poison. So you can't tell me it's not going to float around in your house and you're going to have problems with it. And they have found, not just with insulation, but with fire retardant chemicals used in mattresses, clothing, carpets, all kinds of stuff, that they've done testing in people's homes for indoor air quality, which I'm a big proponent of, nice, good quality air on the inside, fresh air return and things like that, that the rate of fire retardant chemicals in the air, especially on a newer home with newer products in there, is incredibly high. They don't know what it's going to do to the body. I don't either, but I don't want to find out because in 1945, I always use this as an example, and I'll stop it here. In 1945, people would say, there's no scientific evidence that cigarettes cause cancer. And that was their answer to everything. So I'm not waiting for the scientific evidence. Common sense prevails in my life and on my show.
Oh, you got to trust science, Tom.
Yeah, I found that out this last year.
Yeah.
Whatever science you want.
As they say in England. All right.
All right.
Next
I
question.
do say that. Yes.
Patrick in Anchorage, Alaska says, for new construction, what's the best option for radiant barriers? Decking, paint, or foil against the roof decking? Or foil over the rafters? There, multiple guests, Tom.
Yeah, I know. You can do them all. My first thing, before we get to radiant barriers, you would never use it in Anchorage, Alaska. But who knows, maybe the guy's moving south. So I'm going to answer the question. It's always on new construction, the most easiest way, because there's no extra labor. There's a little more waste, but not that much. On your plywood decking, just buy it with it already applied to the plywood decking. Shiny side down. They got to deck the roof anyway. And if they're good with the material, they'll make sure the waste, even with regular plywood, is kept to a minimum. And boom, it's down, it's done. No extra labor, nothing else to do except move on with the construction of the home. So that's always for new construction, always the preferred way to do it.
Now, why do you say in Anchorage you wouldn't use it, Tom? I mean, don't they have radiant heat coming in? I mean, the sun's the same distance from the Earth there that it is here.
I don't know if that's really true, but because the Earth
It
is
isn't?
kind of wobbles
Aren't we
around.
kinda-
I don't know.
all right.
I'm not going to go
Well,
down that
let's just say,
science road.
in terms of how far the sun is
Yes.
from the Earth, it's within miles of the same distance as
That
here.
is true. But in Alaska, this is a great question. Your R value, because you're so concerned about the cold weather that, well, until last February here in Houston, we just don't get it. So we don't design for those kind of problems. It's so cold in the winter, you have huge amounts of insulation in the attic, into the 40s, maybe even into the 50s, depending where you are, what kind of frozen tundra you're in. And so in the summertime, you've so overdone it with the R value that the radiant barrier is going to make no difference at all on your energy savings because you have such a high thermal barrier there. That's why it's just a waste of time. Now, the other thing that can happen, which you don't want to happen in those areas, is it can retain heat that gets caught up in the gable attic area, and you don't want that in the wintertime. You always want your temperature in the attic to be the same as the outside, because what will happen is you'll get sweating, you'll get snow melting on the roof, you'll get ice dams forming, you'll get icicles forming in the attics because the moisture's not leaving. You don't want hot air in an attic because hot air holds water, and water will freeze. So what you want it to do is stay very cool up there. So it's really a bad place to use a radiant barrier in the winter, and it makes no difference in the summer, so why use it at all?
Fair enough.
That was the science. It could change tomorrow.
Yeah, I hear you.
You might need 2 radiant barriers.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah, right. 2. That's right. Use 2 of them. That's it. Just
Okay.
for your own safety, because that's
I'm
you
just
want to
joking. That's not a political thing. I'm just having fun. I don't like any politicians. No, go ahead.
Next question.
Got very
Patrick. Patrick writes to us from, I think from Angleton. It doesn't say it here, but oh yeah,
Okay.
no, excuse me, Ralph rather from Angleton. I'm on top of it today.
Know that well. I built a house down there for somebody. Yes.
Feeling jet lagged today for some reason. So
okay.
he's building a new home in Houston, though, Tom, up in town. And he says, do you still recommend soaker hoses around the perimeter of a house to water the foundation?
They're useful in some areas, and if you need them, Due West Foundation Repair, a great certified home show pro we have on our show here, they will put them in. But this is where you've got to know if you're really going to put one in, or if it comes back after the fact where you didn't have one, you had problems, and someone like Due West says this is the best way to solve it immediately. If you're building a new home today, I would say probably in the Houston area at least, most people are going to have sprinkler systems put in their yard. If you have a sprinkler system that covers the whole yard, there would be no reason to do it. In fact, they've done studies, people that have sprinkler systems and use them on a regular basis, just don't have them and turn them off, and keep the azaleas and everything else around the foundation looking happy, your foundation is watered fine. If you're in a very dry area, you're not going to do any landscaping, you're not going to take care of the yard, you're going to let it dry out, you're on expansive clays, then yes, a watering system just around the foundation could be beneficial from the beginning if you have really bad clays. And the only way to do that if you're building a new home is look at the soil report. And you're going to have a PI, it's a plasticity index. And the higher the number, the more expansive the soils are. It'll tell you if it's in the 50s and 60s. And you're not going to do any landscaping, you're not going to take care of your yard, you're not going to have a sprinkler system. then it could be beneficial to avoid someone like Due West coming out and having to do major work as well as a sprinkler system or a watering system, I should say.
That's about a slab. Now, I assume the same thing goes for pier and beam or block and base or a perimeter.
I would say no. Not in a.
No, I'm saying that the same thing you're saying. If the same thing goes for it as far as putting a watering system around something, you wouldn't do that.
No, if I had a really well done, I built a lot of them. Built the one in Angleton we mentioned earlier.
Okay.
A perimeter wall foundation is what I call them, and it's done right either with piers going down, holding up the wall, or you have a footer that's buried in the ground. You don't need to have the watering systems. And you have less foundation problems with a new one. Now, you get into the old ones where they just threw concrete block on the ground, built a house. That's different. That's not what I'm talking about. But the reason is this. You have less contact with the soil to the foundation. With a slab, you're basically almost 100% of it doing all kinds of things. But when you have piers going in the ground with a wall on top, or you have a footer that's down on good soil, you have a very small area that's touching the soil. So the soil can move around it and it stays pretty clean. It's a slab that has the problem because there's so much contact.
Mm-hmm. It's that broad spread load that's on there, right?
That's right. In fact, in the old days, today not so much, but in Houston, you used to have an engineer report, engineered slab to put in the Houston proper area, right? But if you did a block and base or a perimeter wall, like I call them, and I did a lot of them, they would forego the engineer report because of that reason. Now, of course, today you have to have it for everything.
You talk about perimeter walls. I was traveling with a business partner of mine. We were up in Ohio, and we were talking about how he's built his own house.
Okay.
I mean, he literally built his house.
Oh, that's fine, yeah.
And I told him, there are people for that.
Yeah,
but
no
anyway.
Usually takes a long time when you do it by yourself, but okay.
Well, and to that point, they built like a 500 square foot, one room kind of studio thing for him, his wife, and now his 7-month-old child. And he built it with what you're talking about, the perimeter wall construction. They went down 4 feet and they poured this thing all the way around. They built a house on it because now he can just dig another one out and add on to it. And that's what he's doing. He's building the house gradually as he goes along. So, and I guess that would be okay with that kind of foundation where you just keep adding on to it, I guess, right?
Yeah, you can do that even with slabs if you engineer it right.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this, it's easier to do what he's doing. It's a good plan. It's done all the time because even if you build them, sometimes you build them in sections, even though you're building the whole project. And it's funny you would say that. I remember when I used to run the Owner Builder Center at Houston Community College way back in the early 90s when it was a new thing to be your own contractor. And we would have people that would get land. In Texas, you buy a lot of land. And they would put up a garage apartment and say, oh, and then we're going to live in that and build the house. They got so comfortable in their garage apartment, they never built a house. They said, we didn't need the big house after all. And so it's funny that maybe we'll see how much of a house he actually ends up with once he gets comfortable.
We got a couple more questions. I just want to add, though,
Yes.
Sandy and I bought some land up in that Texas Grand Ranch.
Yeah.
I bought 3 acres up there. And in the POA up there specifically says, you got to build a house first. And then
Yes, they did start to figure that stuff
right,
out.
they said, now we're on to you. And by the way, you can't just put a garage on the property because I was thinking, I could park your no, and you're not allowed to camp on your property. I'm like, well, come on, man. Anyway, I'm sorry, didn't mean to go all Joe Biden on you there, but all right.
No,
Hey,
I remember when all those rules changed back in the 90s when people started buying land in big subdivisions, 2 acres, 5 acres, and they were doing that.
Yeah,
They said, no,
yeah.
we can't do that.
No. In fact, they even restrict the size of the building, the outbuilding. So you can't put like a 500 square foot house in a 10,000 foot outbuilding
right.
in back. So they've got,
Warehouse.
that's why we bought up there because they thunk all that through. Paul says hi, by the way. He's in League City watching. Paul,
Hey,
it's good
Paul.
to have you here. And Ernesto and let's see, let me try this.
All I see is Paul here.
Yeah. And then, and also, Jesus is with us. He says, I recently noticed the floor in my stand-up shower has a weak spot. It dips when I step in that section. Well, don't do that. He says, what needs to be done to remedy this, Tom?
You're going to have to remove I'm sure hopefully it's a pan. Now, if it's a tile floor on a wood frame, like a second floor or a block and base wood frame structure, you're going to have to tear the whole thing out and rebuild it because you've got water rot that's rotted the structure. If it's one of those fiberglass pans, which usually this question to me is, that pan's got to go. Those fiberglass pans, they put them down. They don't support them underneath. In other words, they don't put them in a mud set. So when they squish it down, you have this mud. We call it mud, but it's like a thin set or a sandcrete, and it fills all the voids and gives it a good hard surface so it doesn't fracture. And those things over time, especially as people get bigger, this is nothing personal to anybody, but as we go from 160 pounds to 260 pounds and 300 pounds, today's people are getting bigger. Those things are fracturing under the weight. And as you slowly walk on it, it fractures more and more and more until all of a sudden it becomes like a little trampoline. So if it's a fiberglass pan, that all has to come out. And if it's a structure underneath there that's wood, it all has to come out and rebuild the whole thing, quite frankly. Trying to pull the pan out and replacing it without doing the walls and everything is very difficult. So usually it means a shower remodel.
Well, I would never accuse you of having a failure of imagination, but it doesn't have to be a 300-pound person. It could be two 150-pound people.
It could be 5.
You never know. You got the right
Today,
shower.
I judge no one. I just make fun of everybody.
We judge no one. So, Jesus, we hope that helped you out there, buddy.
Jose, Jesus, I think you're looking at a remodel.
Yeah. And if nothing else, a new shower pan, and which might as well be a remodel.
Yeah, because you got to cut the bottom. You can't match the tile. Then you got to detail it all. So let's see what you can do, but somebody creative in there. But I think it's going to be just a new shower. It's time.
Yeah.
And stay away from the pans.
He says, by the way,
tile floor in. It's good.
He says it is a fiberglass pan. He just wrote in and said, but he thanks you for the answer. Hey, you're welcome, Jesus. We're glad to help you. That's why we're here every Thursday at 4 o'clock Central Time, answering questions till we run out of them, and then we get out of here and go. Or
we get at 4:30, whatever the case may be.
Exactly. Whichever comes first. Right.
Yes.
Hey, I think here it comes out there. All right, we've been together. How many years we've been doing this? All right, one more question here before we hoist sail and head out here, and that one comes to us from Michelle in Conroe, and she says the water in my bathroom takes forever to get warm or hot. It will get warm or hot if it runs 5 minutes. It's not a problem with any of the other faucets in the house. The one in my bathroom is a single faucet with separate hot-cold water handles. So what is the cause? What can you recommend for her, Tom?
If it gets hot and you have to run it and all of a sudden it's super hot, you have to cut it down with a cold and take your shower, it's just distance. It's from point A to point B. It has, however they set up the plumbing run, you have a lot of water between where the water heater is. I should do this. Where the water heater is and where your point of use is, which would be your shower. So running it is the solution right now. There's nothing you can do short of just running it. And if it really is 5 minutes, I will tell you 5 minutes is a long time. So hopefully it's less than that. In most cases, people tell me that, and it seems like 5 minutes. But if you really time it, see if that really works. And you can open up some other faucets, and maybe it'll mix some more hot water in the pipes and empty out the pipes. But that gets to be a chore. So the answer to this, if that's what the problem is a circulation pump. And you can have a plumber in Houston called Abacus Plumbing. They do a lot of these. It's a circulation pump that goes on the water heater, or it can go in the bathroom, but usually they'll put it on the water heater, and it circulates very slowly when it needs to. It has a thermometer that tells it when it needs to do it, and circulates the water in the pipe. You don't waste any water. It takes the cold water and dumps it in the cold until it gets hot. Then it shuts down, and all the pipes are full of hot water. And that way, when you turn it on, your water is warm to hot very quick. And so it's a great way to save water. Not much energy is saved, but a lot of water is saved if that becomes an issue. So look at a circulation pump if there's no other inherent problem in the house. I don't think there is. I think it's just homes today are getting bigger and bigger, and they're spreading out. What used to be a big home at 1,800 square foot back in the 60s, today is a 4,500 square foot home, especially in Texas. And that's a normal home for a lot of people today. A lot of square footage, which means a lot of distance and a lot of pipe getting from one place to the other in the walls.
No, she's up there in Conroe, and
that's
I know
Texas.
Yeah, well, no,
Yeah.
no. As you were asking if Abacus would go there, I mean, they're right there at Intercontinental. I'm sure that's a hop and a skip up the road for them. They're up in the Woodlands in Conroe. Yeah, I'll tell you what's amazing, if you haven't been up there, is if you take 45 north there, right, through the Woodlands, just keep going, how far out it stays 6-8 lanes wide, all the way up to Huntsville now.
they were building that. You moved up to Willis, where the Bentwater subdivision is. I built a home up in there for some people. And I remember all that construction. That construction's going on. I've been out of the building business for 10 years almost now. And that construction has been going on for those 10 years because I drove it every day. And Charlie, not too long ago, I had to drive to Dallas because of my dad. And I noticed the same thing. It does go on, and it's going to go on and on all the way to Huntsville eventually.
Well, it does. It makes it all the way to Huntsville now.
Does it make it like that all the way to Huntsville? Okay.
Yeah.
That's because where you're living now will soon be an extension of downtown, where you bought your property up there in Willis.
Yeah, I know. That's what I told Sandy. I said, we bought this property up in the country, but here's a good deal. My back property line has these signs on it that says National Forest. I'm not that worried about it. That's good. So,
yeah.
All right.
But remember, that happened in Magnolia. That used to be out in the country. Talk to the people who moved to Magnolia.
I'll see you and raise you.
Downtown Houston.
West U used to be out in the country, you know? So
did Champions where I live. That used to be the country homes. They would drive and spend the summer up there.
All right. Well, time to land the airplane. Tell them where they can find more of you.
All right, homeshowradio.com. You get lots of videos. Our certified home show pros, if you listen or watching us from the Houston area, of course. And then on Sports Radio 610, there you go, all the people that really good. We check them out. These are the best of the best in the Houston area. And Houston's a big city, so there's a lot of competition, but we find the best ones to recommend to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. On Sports Radio 610, of course, on the radio, 9 to noon on Saturday, 8 to 11 on Sunday on Sports Radio 610. And bingo, we can never forget about Danny Milliken. He's one of my favorite people because he builds the audience on Saturday morning for me, and he does a great job because gardening is a hot topic right now in the Houston area because of the cold topic we had in February. So he builds a great audience for me, and he does a great job on Saturdays from 7 to 9.
Yeah, not like our lead-in on Sundays. All right.
Well, I won't go there. I'll let Mosier Media take care of that.
Yeah, I'm on it. All right.
Yeah, okay.
If you tune in sometime around, I don't know, 10 till 8. See if you can handle it. All right.
That's too long.
Yeah. All right. Let me give you a hint. The show's called Eye on Houston, and it's on the radio. Okay? They started with a problem right there.
Never thought about that.
Hey, something new before we go.
Uh-oh.
Just want to tell you that if you really like those home flipping shows, there is a new one from the Do We Really Need This department. And that is a show called Murder House Flip.
Really?
Yeah. No, this is really a thing, okay? And it's used to stream on Roku, but now the show is streaming on it used to be on something called Quibi. Right? And what this show is it used to be, hang on a second, I've got some pictures here for you. They used to have, you're going to love this. They go to houses where there have been horrible murders, and then they remodel and flip the house. Like, for instance, in the first episode, they're going to go to one where there were 7 murders, and they redo the house and help market. So if you like to mix CSI with your HOA, we've got the show for you. It's called Murder House Flip, and you can find it on Roku. So I know, Tom.
And we can also throw in there the Ghost and Mr. Muir or whatever.
Yeah, Mrs. Muir. You're right.
Mrs. Muir. Okay. Anyway, right. Charlie, you got way too much time, and we need to get
I do. I'm afraid so.
Sponsors.
We're out. We'll be back again next Thursday at 4:00 Central Time.
Got a question? Ask Tom on Home Show Radio. Home Show Radio. Free advice from a pro who